Yep. Okay. So I think I'm live. How do I know if there's someone on? I'll check. So if anyone's watching yet, this is my first time doing this. So it's kind of trial and error, and I'm trying to figure out. Oh, I am live. Yay. Okay, good. Good to know. Hi. Okay, hi, my name is Mickey Katz. I'm a cellist at the Boston Symphony, coming to you from my house, like everyone else. My dog is right there eating his dinner. Almost, you can see the water bowl. Maybe you can see him later. Yeah, so until I get questions and all of that, just wanted to say how thrilled I am to be here on CelloChat. I've been following and close to it since it started. I think I wrote a blog maybe the first year that CelloBello existed, maybe the second. So it's been a long journey. So I've been watching and being involved on the sidelines. So it's a really a privilege and awesome to be here in one of the chats. And yeah, so I just also want to say I hope everyone is safe in their homes. This is such a traumatic time for all of us, I think for everyone, but for musicians in particular. And it's so nice to see nice to see how much everyone is sharing their music, and this is a part of it. I teach a lot now on Zoom, on every kind of platform that I can find. I do a lot of videos for the BSO education. I do all like mini lessons on excerpts and such, and I do Bach suites on my Instagram, and it's really great to see all the interaction everyone has. It's this community of cellists that's that builds, that is being, it's always there, but it's just great to see being built. Yeah, so as I figure out how all of this works as far as things, question from our YouTube live audience: what artists have been most influential to you in your life so far? There's so many influences, and I lately I was thinking about how I think people who follow this are all different levels from beginner to very advanced, and some of the deepest influences I feel I have are the people I studied when I was younger, when I was in my teens and earlier. My first cello teacher, Uri Vardi, was now for many years teaches in the University of Wisconsin, right? Yes, but I studied with him when I was 7 years old in Israel, and really getting the sense of what the body of just a sense of what it means to relaxation and tension and release, and really all the basics of technique. And then later on, studying with Uzi Wiesel, passed away last year, who had this really unusual mind. I wonder if anyone watching it took a masterclass with him. He was really an extraordinary musician, and in kind of synthesizing musicianship and technique, and breaking down music in a very unusual way. He actually has a analytic edition of Bach suites that he published before he died, and that's really worth looking at. I see a window of myself popping out of the corner, which is okay. Let's see. When you start working on a new obscure piece, where do you start? How do you approach it? Especially if you can't find any background information on recordings. Yeah, I've done a lot of. I really love playing new music, so I think that's one of the greatest joys of being a musician. If you can find a composer, I think from school going to other students who are composition students and working with them. I think so many of the greatest pieces were created that way by collaboration, and composers for the most part are very, very eager to get feedback. And the more you can contribute and not be too polite, I found that with composers you have to be a little firm sometimes. You can help them discover the instrument. And when I get the score, if let's say the composer is not available, you try to find patterns, and I like to attack music from a few different angles simultaneously. So one way is going note by note, writing in fingerings, bowings, trying to get at the same time. Then in between those kind of intense cello sessions, taking the music and speaking the music or singing, depending on the kind of love of new music. Doesn't really take well to singing. So you speak it, you scream it, just trying to vocalize, beat on stuff on the walls and on the piano, or whatever you can do to try and internalize. And I find that doing both at the same time is very helpful. So you have and that's true, I think, with any kind of music, doing a bottom up and a top down approach at the same time. So from the bottom up is really going note by note, finding all those little details. How do I solve issues cellistically? And the top down is what's going on here, and depending on how close it is, if you can find connections to music, latching onto that whenever you can. Yeah, so I think that's basically it. Well, okay, I'll bounce here and there. Hi, Nancy. Cellist vibrato color palette. If I have advice for expanding a cellist vibrato color palette. Well, we I think just doing very slow vibrato works is just taking one note. And sometimes for me, I see in those Chester, so many people talking about their warm-up routines, and that has been fascinating to see. Some of them put me to shame. Who was that with 2 hours of scales? But sometimes one of my favorite things is to just pick a note and play around with colors. So if you take any random note and you try to establish a tone you're happy with, really good contact and good free sound, and then just try to change it to the wider vibrato and narrower vibrato, different points of contact. I think probably most of us know that depending on what point of the finger the string touches, it changes the amplitude of the vibrato and how easy or difficult it is to change the speed, and also not being attached to any preconception of what should vibrate. So if you can have more more generous full arm vibrato, but in some places you want to have a narrower, tighter vibrato. Sometimes if you do it all the time, it's ugly, but you want to be able to have all sort of colors, and if you take that every day, and that's like musical warm up, just or in a scale, you just play the same notes. And when we talk about vibrato, we can't forget that vibrato is always married to the bow. So the same vibrato that will sound good, will sound like one thing when we have a very floaty, fast bow speed, will sound completely different with a slower, more intense bow. So even though they may look when you look at the left hand, they look the same, they will sound very different. So that's a part of the experiment, and I think that's where, especially now when we're most of us, big majority of us, are locked at home, we can do that. You can take as long as you want to just try different things, different movements, different motions, and generally, I think there's no wrong answer. I mean, look at the great cellists. There's all those crazy, weird ways of vibrating, and they just have to work for you and for the music. Right. So. Okay. Core principles to encourage my students to focus on the practice room. Advice for practicing orchestral excerpts and taking orchestral auditions. Oh, that's a big one. I play in orchestra, so that tends to be something I'll, yeah. So I'll talk about playing excerpts in general and taking auditions. It's a big subject, so I'll just kind of riff on that, and then if there are questions having to do with it, we always say, people say in orchestras that the audition system that we have now is the worst possible, except can't really think of a better one, or I'm not saying it correctly. Anyway, no one likes the way auditions are run, and we always try to do them in a way that is humane, and in a way that we can find the best possible players. So one thing about taking auditions in general that I think is very important, I think it's helpful for people to think, is not to think of it as something confrontational. So to understand that the committee is there trying to do something constructive, which is to hire a colleague. But if you look at it from that perspective, from the committee's perspective, it might be less intimidating, or at least less of a negative feeling. What we do when we audition, when the committee runs an audition, is try to find, to hear the individual, to hear what they can do, what they sound like, and the excerpts are in a way of fine-tuning our understanding of someone's playing. So almost always audition will start with a solo piece, and concerto or Bach, where it depends where you are, and that's really where you get the transmit who you are. This is my calling card. That's why I always think that in addition, the solo piece is the most important thing, even though many people don't think about that, because Dvorak Concerto, sure, you've played it, practice it with your teacher, you know it very well, and the excerpts are the scary thing because they're foreign and they're weird. A few things about so yeah, so what I mean is that the excerpts, after we get a general idea of who you are as a musician, then we try to see, okay, what does that player do with this style, or really hone in on some things that we want to hear. If it's Brahms to second movement theme, how does that player play a real cantilena, a real legato, beautiful sound? If it's something that has issues with intonation, like how all of that. How do you approach those is very difficult because they're so they're detached um, from their music. So that's the reason why many people have so much difficulty with excerpts. One thing I always think is helpful is to try and um, connect the excerpt that you play to music that's familiar, that's internalized. So, for example, if you play Beethoven 5, you think about that excerpt from, and if you haven't had a lot of experience playing in an orchestra, you don't know what that's like. But it's Beethoven, it's a piano dolce. The sound and the feeling should be similar to. It's the same idea. Same goes to Brahms. But you can think as the second movement of F major sonata, etc. So that's. I can follow up if there are any follow-up questions because there's a lot to unpack in all of that. Can you recall a specific piece of advice from any of your teachers that has proven to be particularly impactful throughout your career? That's a tough one, and I've seen it before. It is a poll, and I was like, what could it be? And there's so many snippets of ideas that you get throughout your life. One thing that I was reminded of, and I like is Larry Lesser often says, especially when someone goes in a studio class or something and messes up badly, no one goes on a stage and wants to do badly. It's obvious, but it's something to keep in mind because we can be judgmental and we can feel like we're being judged, whatever we do. And it's important to keep in mind that it's absurd that anyone would try to do badly. We're all there to make music. Everyone does it differently. We're at different levels, different ideas, all of that. But the having that awareness that we're all in it together in a way, that we're all going up there and we all know the feeling. We are all vulnerable on stage. We're all. I mean, that's a related thing. I would say if you go, he always says if you were told to go on a stage and strip naked, stand in front of everyone, you would say you're crazy. But when we play music and when we play it well or from the heart, we strip internally. We reveal ourselves in a much deeper way than that. So we put ourselves in such a vulnerable place, and I think it's important to remember for ourselves and for others because, like we see here, we're a community as musicians, as cellists, as artists, as people, and to always put ourselves in other people's shoes. I think that's crucial. I think as also it was said that you be a human first, and then a musician, and then a cellist. So love the cello. That's who we are. But who we are as people is much more substantial. All right. Can you help me with some tips for the beginning of Shostakovich 1? I've taught it. I've never played Shostakovich 1. I think now, quarantine time, this is it. I mean, I've fiddled with it, but now I'm really going to learn it, and in a few weeks, then I'll know everything to know. But probably I'm not the best person to. I've never played it in concert, basically. I'll go back to something. There's Haydn First Concerto. Any advice to start learning Haydn First Concerto? And I'm not sure if that refers to the C major or the D. There's all this confusion with numbers. So I would love a clarification of that, because they're both so great, and they have such different character, such different same composer, but you have to approach them completely differently. So that I'd love to know what that means. Okay, some fun technique stuff. And I love about those chats is that we get all this like nerdy cello nerd technique things, and everyone has a different way of looking at it. How to reduce tension in the right arm, particularly in the wrist and shoulder. One thing that I learned that I think is helpful is realizing that we always think about releasing, always release, and what, especially not just beginners, but many players, students, I feel have a hard time with it. You always feel like you're doing something wrong, and the reason is because you can't really fully release whatever you do. If I was to fully be loose, the bow would fall out of my hand. I would drop the shoulder. If I, talk about shoulder being down, if I constantly try to push my shoulder down, I build up tension. So a better concept is to think of being able to go to release, to have tension and release as a duality. And so if you have a down bow, you build up tension between the thumb and the first finger. That's something that happens. You can't not do that. And as you play the up bow, you reverse the order, especially in the fingers and palm. So as you play, I think one thing you can do is like in relaxation techniques when you do for meditation or whatever, try to tense up intentionally and then release it. So if we're talking shoulder, keeping the shoulder very tight, and then gradually what you need to do, I think doing that, you become more aware of which muscles you need to activate, and which muscles are tight and are not contributing. So what I mean is we're not releasing everything, but we're trying to be really specific about what tensions are necessary and what's unnecessary, and we're trying to let go of unnecessary tension. That's kind of a partial answer if I think of more. Yeah, but if we're thinking shoulder, really the shoulder naturally has a way of moving through the shoulder blade and shoulder phrasing as you play a down bow and releasing with a like giant lungs. Yeah, I don't know if that's a clear way of describing it, but the idea of having tension that you can release from, and not just trying to let loose. One thing you can do is kind of hold the arm off and having that, being able to go from tension to complete dead, to have the whole arm. It's easier when a teacher does that for you than do it yourself. But you can have that idea of being able to turn into the arm into overcooked pasta in an instant, from tension to release. I think that's the skill that we need to not feel tight, to be able to do that. Large intervallic shifts. What's my approach for fluid movement and shifts? Shifts and leaps are always tough, isn't it? I like to think as simply as well. They're just like with something else. I think if you have a variety of strategies, you're better off, because different things work for different people. Doing shifts reverse. So if you have, I don't want to demonstrate because then I'll mess up. But just starting from the top note and going backwards, that's one thing. Sometimes, or more than sometimes, focusing on the bow can help us. So if you go, you have some simple one octave leap, focusing on catching the target note with your bow, rather than worrying so much about movement, because in a way there's always a kind of a slide, even fast. And I remember Uzi Diesel talking about making me watch NBA games. And I said, well, you have to watch those incredible basketball players, and even the most skilled, incredibly skilled players, they have that little instant of pause, even if they don't throw, 3 point. I'm not a sports fan, so I don't know the terminology, but that sense of aiming, which is different from what I said about the bow. That too. Other than that, practicing our scales and arpeggios, so to know, and double stops, to get to know the geography of the fingerboard. That there's no replacement for that. So the more you do that, you get to know almost the invisible frets. They're here, all the proportions. So the more familiar with that, the more it becomes less scary, or the less scary it becomes, because you know, and go for the places that you're scared of. So if we're in a place where playing on the high register is scary, just play scales on the high register. Take a piece that you know, something really simple, and play it an octave higher. Just try to from just from imagination and transpose it up an octave. Different thing, but right hand, for so many of us, the tip, the upper third of the bow is substantially weaker. So take a piece you work on, and for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, play everything just on the upper half of the bow, and you build up your strength, and you build up just being comfortable with the uncomfortable. And so that's valid for playing high. And once you're more familiar with playing high, and it becomes less scary. Then when you have to go there, it's just going to a place you know. And yeah, the fluidity of the movement, I think going backwards was very helpful. Just I'm not a big fan of a huge fuss, sort of circles and extra movements. I think that our mission is always, for technique, is to simplify. Whatever seems too complicated, we'll sort of pictures of whatever seems too complicated usually is too complicated. That's just my way of looking at things. Hello, hello. Moving on. I played it so hard. I'd love to know which one we're talking about. Yeah, so getting the high position pitches right from Japan. Hello, Japan. Oh, miss Japan. Yeah, so the same thing. Play. If there's a place you're not familiar with, you have to spend a lot of time there. That's there. There's no way around it. So to getting the high position pitches right, if you can transpose up and down, play something you're familiar with, something you know really well in the lower positions. Take that, play it high. If you can, write it down. Try to you have to get your brain processing things from as many different angles as possible to connect the wires. If you have a piano, play it on the piano, then play it on the cello. How does it sound similar? How does it sound different? It's just about really familiarizing ourselves with something and not being scared of it. We fear the unfamiliar. So play high. Yeah, I think that's a really good exercise. If you take something very familiar, I don't know what level you are. Could be a Suzuki Book 2 thing that you play here. Take it up an octave, 2 octaves. Play it in a different key. If it's in C major, play it in C sharp major. See what happens, and you record yourself. We all have phones now. We can record ourselves. When I was younger, it was such a big deal to get any kind of video recording of yourselves. My family couldn't afford that. Now everyone has a phone. Take a video, listen to it. Is it what you want to hear? Is it not? So that's that's how I think of high high notes. What does your practice time consist of, and how do you work more efficiently with practice? Yeah, I think one thing of being an orchestral musician is that you're forced to be very effective with time. I don't practice as much as I should. Now I have time. I'm with the kids and family, and there's tons of things to do. So I practice more than I do usually. Normally we have rehearsals every day, concerts, 4 or 5 or more concerts a week. There's very limited time to practice, and the repertoire in an orchestra just keeps moving all the time. You just keep getting a new program every single week, plus whatever I do that's solo and chamber, and things I teach that I want to keep. So prioritizing, that's the first thing, is really prioritizing. If I have a new orchestra program and there's a piece, by now I know most of the repertoire. Let's say there's a Nielsen symphony I've never played. Just being able to scan, that takes experience, but you learn to scan the music and see what would be problematic, and then think up fingerings. In a professional orchestra, there's a big taboo on writing fingerings in the music, which is kind of too bad because it's very helpful when you can. But if I was to write fingerings in music, people would give me people would not be happy. But if you even have your own copy, write in fingerings, then even if it's not on the music, knowing that, yeah. So really prioritizing, picking, having a game plan, basically. That's what it is. Not wasting time on playing things through, unless that's what's part of your plan, because that's important too. So really prioritizing your time, not starting at the beginning and practicing to the end, but going one isolating spots, and the more isolation we can do, the better. we look at a piece that's something that we work on, we see something that looks very difficult, and we think that's a very difficult page. But if you look at it carefully enough, you'll be able to see it's not a difficult page, it's a difficult bar or 2 bars. And if you look at it even better, you'll see it's not actually a difficult bar, it's a difficult transition, it's a difficult issue in bowing, it's a difficult shift or something that's uncomfortable. And the more you can isolate those, you'll it's like a pressure point, like in a massage, where you find that one spot where it's really painful, and everything around it resolves itself. So starting from trying to pinpoint as much as possible the things that you need to practice on, and that can be as little as half a measure of music. It's often not, oh man, I have to work on that. It's usually much less. That's what I do. I should practice more than I do, but we all do, right? We should get one of those 2-set violin merchandise. I'm sure a lot of you know that, with all sort of stuff about practicing. And I think our fate as musicians is to always feel guilty about it. I'm sure whoever I'm talking to, everyone always, you will always feel guilty about how much you practice. That's that. Vibrato, particularly in the first and second position, my cello shakes laterally. It's not in the higher positions. I have an explanation. Well, yeah, I mean, just physically, you have more leverage here. When you're up in higher positions, you're supported by your legs. The cello is much more supported. Here you have this lever, which is the neck, right from the neck to the tip of the end pin. It's a pretty long thing, and when you vibrate here, there will be more movement. If the bodies were really, the knees and the bodies were what should be the stabilizer. I think for many beginners, if you hold a cello and you do that, move around, and you make sure that you're really stable. You sit well. I think a lot of people sit with their legs in all sort of directions. I think as much as, when you're advanced and there are people who move all over the place, that's, it's good for them if it works. But as you learn the cello, being really grounded, feet on the ground, knees and cello being in place, and there will be give and take. There's movement, definitely more than in higher positions, but it shouldn't be so much that it bothers you. And advice some big interval shifts. That's what we just went over that. How can I choose a good bow? That's really tough. I've never been a big equipment guy. In the orchestra, the rest of the section, they'll get together in the tuning room or in the locker room or stage after rehearsal, and someone got some fancy instrument from a dealer, and everyone will play it over and over and over. I get really attached. I have my cello. It's an English cello that I got a long time ago in an auction, and I'm attached to it. So I feel, even if some fancy, I don't know, if a Montagnano or a Stroud or something comes in and everyone plays, I feel a little like I'm cheating on it if I'm trying it. So even with bows, I don't own any really fancy bows, but bows are such a personal thing. I don't think there's any place that there are different weights, there are different distribution of weights, different just how much give you have, how flexible it is, and different people have different tastes. So the only way I think to do it is to go to a dealer, go to somewhere, and ask for, just try a whole bunch, and then narrow it down. That's the only way. And if you can, if you have friends, if you have colleagues, if you have family, anyone, once you narrow it down enough to play for them, and if you, let's say you have down to 2 or 3 bows, and just have people not tell them which is which. There's bow A, there's bow B, and they'll hear what happens to your sound, what happens to your articulation. So it's really trial and error. And the more you try, the better bows you try. Sometimes one thing you can do, if you live in a place where they're good high quality dealerships or makers or something, if you try instruments and bows that are better than what you can afford, you learn a lot about what to look for, even if you're not going to buy it. I learned from playing on some colleagues' bows and some bows I loaned. Some fantastic, famous maker bows. From playing on that, and they'll let you, if you seem like a responsible person, they'll let you at least try, if not borrow. You really learn about what you're looking for, and then you can find in your price range, because also prices are wild. If I have very little time to practice cello and no teacher, is it better to work on many exercises or solo? One method is Dotzower, a good choice. Dotzower is boring, but it's really good. It's really like highly nutritious food or something. I love kale, but I wouldn't want to live on kale. That's kind of how I would look at Dotzower. I take up Dotzower every now and then and practice it. Any of the books from the first one, you can still learn a lot from it. Second, third is great, and the fourth is really tough. Not a lot of people know the fourth book. So yeah, I like Dotzower, but in quantities. If you can get a teacher in any way, even if get online, and if you can't afford to pay much, find an undergraduate or a student who's people will teach for not very much. It's just there's a certain I see now there's a lot of people who are self-taught, and it's great and you can enjoy it, but you're very likely to get bad habits that will hinder your advancing and build up bad habits that will be really tough to get rid of. So if you can, even if it's part-time, every other week or something, have someone who knows what they're doing to play for. So I would prioritize that. And then, in any case, you and also to find the music that fits you and your level and what you do, because that's a huge thing. You play something that's too easy for you, it can be frustrating in one thing. If you play something that's you can't really play, or maybe you think you can play, but you can't really play, it's not good for how you end up playing, and also psychologically it'll be frustrating and it'll be tougher to continue and to flourish. So finding someone, at least for advice, I think it's really important. And you want a combination of exercises and pieces, and that's where a teacher can help. I mean, you can try on your own if you have to, but it's really tough. It's not it's a cello. It's not a guitar where you can have Anyway, going back to Iverson. Going back to orchestra questions, it's better to play an excerpt more traditionally and perfect. I like traditionally and perfect if it sacrifices some uniqueness and musicality in order to win an audition. Do committees prefer more standardized sound, or a musician who has a fresh interpretation? I like to think, why not both? You should have should be perfect. A lot of times, even in orchestras, I've been in the committee when I played my BSO audition, I sure as hell didn't play perfectly, and I've sat on many committees uh, in the BSO, including for principal. I have not. Oh yeah, one or two. I'm not saying I know who they are, and you'll know who they are, but out of hundreds and hundreds of people, including the people who were hired, did not play perfectly. So that's a misconception. Um, but the traditional kind of what the interpretation is, I think there's a spectrum, and uh, you have to be convincing in what you do. So, in other words, you don't get brownie points for being very original. So if you come into an audition and you play a Bach and you do something that no one else does, you do something really out there, um, it's a risk, and you don't get a. Some people may love it, some people may not love it. If you have something, but you do want to be an individual because that's what we want. Well, I would never, I wouldn't want to sit for decades with someone I don't respect sitting next to me. And I'm lucky in our orchestra, I deeply respect every single one of my colleagues. And none of them is similar. If any of you know the cellists in the Boston Symphony, we're a bunch of weirdos, and each one of us plays very differently in style. I know some orchestras have a more cohesive style. We don't, and I love it because if we play solo, we've done some things where we collaborate and we play it, and just hearing one after the other and hearing how differently we all play it, that's really a delight. But to answer the question more specifically, you um, you have to convince us. You have to convince the committee. And if you play, let's say you play Schumann Concerto, and what does it mean to be original or fresh? If a lot of you'll hear people playing, let's say it's Schumann Concerto and playing with no beat, just playing some crazy interpretation where it goes faster and slower, and there's no spine to it. And the candidate will say, "Oh well, I'm playing with my individuality and original, fresh interpretation." But if you know the music, I feel strongly that the music has to have. If you know the accompaniment, if you know what the orchestra does, to know when you have freedom and when you're constrained by more regular time. So it's really about having integrity, and so you want. I'll give an example. Sorry, I'm getting stuck on that because that's something that you hear a lot, and it's difficult to do when you go for an audition. How much do I give myself? Is it too much? Is it too little? I was preparing and I played for one of the before I got the job. We had to play the first movement of Arpeggione Sonata, and I played it to one of the cellists in the section, and at some point they said, "Oh no, what you're doing here is totally wrong. It's because you're playing from the wrong edition." I was playing from I think it was Henley, and he had the international Rose edition. It's like, well, no, that's the correct way, the way it is in the Rose. So I got out of that, and I thought, well, I feel strongly about being as close to the source as possible, and I'm not going to change there. But what he told me is whatever I was doing was not convincing. I went back to that passage, and I kept the music as I believed in it, but I worked on it to make it work. Because you wanted that's what it is. It's about being convincing, giving and being fully behind what you do. If you try to please like in a concert, if you try to please people too much, it's not good. You fail before you started. But you have to go back to yourself and be honest with yourself and see if it makes sense and if it's convincing. If you sold your ideas. Completely broken right pink distorted. No surgery will really fix it. That sounds awful. It cannot touch the bow. Oh, you mean in right pinky? Can I play with the other fingers and still do okay? Oh yeah. Well, you'd have it's in pain and you can't touch. Well, you'd have to find a way that you don't build up tension in the other fingers. But I've seen there are people. I wish I remember the guy's name. It was a TMC many years ago, Tanglewood Music Center, and he had only one finger and a thumb. Yeah, he had, whatever condition he had, I don't remember. I'm sure I wish I remembered the name. But he played extraordinarily beautiful, and he figured out how to play the Kodai sonata. Played Kodai with all the crazy pitch things, just working it out with just one finger and thumb, and he figured it out. So if you have 3 fingers and thumb, you've got everything you need. The main function of the pinky on the bow is to balance. And when you try to play softer, and when you get closer to the frog, and having the weight on the little finger counterbalances the weight that you have on the first 2. If you're unable to, third finger will do just fine. If that's, it's always, if we had 6 fingers, it would be even better. So sure, 5 fingers are better than 4, but if you can use 4 fingers, I think you can do just fine. Am I using a posture peg? Yes, I am. Yes, over here. I've always been frustrated with this being stuck here. And when I found out about the posture peg, it just changed my life, because I really care about how we sit, how we so many of us are hunched forward. I'm married to a yoga teacher. I cannot be hunched forward. It can be frowned upon. So yeah, I highly recommend just not having. For those who don't know, it's just where the C peg goes. Some people also have it for the G. Maybe that's helpful too, but at least for me, this is a lifesaver. I feel so much freer not having that here. Tips for organizing sections in an orchestra. Huh. Funny. I've been doing sectionals, teaching sectionals at New England Conservatory for a long time, and I don't know. I like it. It's a funny thing if there's anyone who is or went to NEC watching. It's kind of entertaining. You show up at 9 a.m. and clearly no one wants to be there at that time of the morning, and often players are very unprepared, and they're such fantastic, phenomenal players, and they come. So organizing sectionals as self. I mean, if the section organizes it themselves, or as coming from outside and teaching. That's the distinction. I'm not sure what the question exactly refers to. If you're a student orchestra or a non-professional orchestra, and the section decides to have a sectional, I think it's very helpful if there's one person who's somewhat in charge, just figuring out the places that you want to go over, because you definitely don't want to try and play through everything When I teach, when I give sectionals, I try to do more than just survive and get through and figure out what's going on, but as much as possible, uh, help the section have a sense of style, especially when they're pieces that are different. If you play Berlioz, for example, none of us have that. We don't have any chamber music or solo music by Berlioz. So, so if I let's say I did that, he's a great composer. There's a great repertoire also for the cello. But if you've never played it, that's you really need to know how to approach it, how to approach the style, and how each composer writes differently. Their articulations, their dynamics, um, everything, their sound. Um, yeah, but really figuring out what needs to be worked on. You don't want to ever try to go over everything. Really, when you practice alone, pinpoint whatever you can pinpoint. Mm, well, how to practice the independence of the fingers and the left hand. Okay, I'll read on a little bit so I can see what might be your criteria for the right teacher. Oh, that's so tough. My doctor found out that my left trapezius muscle is stronger than my right. I think this is because of using the thumb in lower positions. So trapezius, left stronger than right. Yeah, I mean, I struggle with that. How this is higher. I mean, for many of us, you look um, at the trapezius. That's the upper trapezius. It goes on underneath here, but yeah, the left upper trapezius being tighter and stronger. Yeah, it's common because of how we are. This is always lifted. Kind of comes with the territory. I try to whatever I do with exercise and whether it's a gym or yoga or something, to try and find um, balance and to get um, imbalances. If you see that it's in an exaggerated way, then it really needs addressing. I think it comes because we're not. I mean, the cello goes on one side, the bow we're not symmetrical. Playing the cello seems kind of symmetrical, but it's not. So we get of the one good thing is that we're not doing as badly as violinists and violists because man, they're a mess. So relatively speaking, we're fine. But yeah, it's true. It's if it because of using the thumb in lower positions. I don't know if that's. I wouldn't I wouldn't think that's the reason, but if you feel like you have tightness in your thumb in lower positions, then that's definitely something to think about. And that relates to the thing I skipped about how to practice independence of the fingers of the left hand. If you think of the fingers, something like sometimes you can think of some alien creature walking. You want the feeling that you're um, the weight the weight of your arm. It's mostly the forearm, but also the arm hanging with each individual finger. In a way, like we walk. One good exercise to do is just walk and observe. You don't keep your weight and tightness in both legs at the same time. Right? That would be ridiculous. I can see. Just do it for yourself. If you just go for a walk and observe how you transfer the weight between one leg and another, and what the leg that is not stepping, what does that do? So we're not going to walk like that, and our legs don't have a thumb coming from underneath the floor to like some kind of monster to grab us. So if we think of our fingers as individuals, and that's something that we don't think about, because as beginners you think about position. You think first position, and you think of it as one unit, and then second position, fourth position. Going from that to really thinking of one finger, and just like we did, I talked about vibrato exercise. Just have that one finger individually, and practicing slowly. I think I can play the cello well, but I don't feel like music. I can't make music enjoyable for myself. Oh, that's too bad. What do you do? That's interesting. Can music enjoyable for? Well, you have to do that because that's what you do it for. I would think you need to take just a step back and let go of the cello, put the cello away, sing, and walk, and talk to yourself. Take the music. Take showers often, so you can sing in the shower with absolutely no just unabashed singing. Just sing like a caricature of an opera singer. Take choose music that you love. Even it doesn't have to be super difficult. Find something that you enjoy listening to, even if it's just a part of it, and sing it, and listen to great players doing it, and again, like about something else, take different approaches. So practice carefully, detail, but then step back and play through stuff to enjoy. Just throw caution to the wind and play and let yourself mess up, and then go back and fix things, and then go again and play like crazy. I think having that back and forth, you can if you do just one, if you just play out, you'll be a mess and you'll sound awful. If you're just really careful, you lose the joy of doing it, and lose the big picture. So I don't know if that. I hope that helps, because you have to enjoy the music. That's what it's there for. Sing, speak. I'm a terrible singer. I teach and I sing it as I teach, and my kids will look through the door and like, oh my god. But you have to do it because that's what comes out. So I'm not going to sing on stage. But I sing to myself, so I don't care if I sing badly. So do that. Sing, speak the music. A lot of music. Bach, I find it's more spoken than sung. So you try to speak it. I think that works better. During preparation for audition, do you have any advice on making sure all excerpts are equally well prepared for the audition dates? I'm thinking of auditions that have you prepare 15 to 20. Yeah, I'm a professional audition. That's a big that's a big issue with auditions. Just the volume of music that you need to prepare, and that's really difficult. Last audition I took, I had printed out just a list of everything, and a little. I tried to. I'm so systematic with my practicing that I had to force myself to make sure that even one day I play this, X, Y, and Z, and then the next day I'll play A, B, and C, etc. Just to make sure that I don't get through too much. So not trying to play through everything every day, but concentrating on a couple, and just keeping track of it, so you don't have one of those excerpts where you got you passed 2 weeks and oh my god, I didn't touch that one. So doing that, and then as you get closer to the audition, I know people do. I do that. Write the names of all the excerpts in a little note, put them in a hat, and then just pull something out, and you have to play. Because I think one of the biggest challenges in an audition is that going on. Well, when you play a concert, you have all the time in the world to well, not all the time in the world, but you we listen to long arcs of music, and the impression is much more of something wide. If you play, let's say I play the La Mer Etc. The whole thing is like 25 seconds. So if I don't catch the sound and the articulation, the dynamic, the pitch, obviously, then it's gone. 20 seconds, it's gone. So that's nothing can do about it. It's a problematic thing about auditions. But if you practice to that, I think that helps. Randomize it. Have a friend tell you, okay, play this, and you just go and get used to. Even if you don't actually just go, that's in audition. Always take time. Always wait before you play. Get your head into the style, into what you want to do, and then play. Have someone distract you. Run around the block once and then go and play to be nervous. There's so many strategies that people use because the experience of playing in an audition is very unnatural. So the more you can get used to unusual circumstances, and when you play an audition, when you play a professional audition, people travel. You may travel one place to another. Shit happens, so to speak. There are so many stories. Something goes wrong. Something goes wrong with the instrument, the hotel, or something. Your flight is late. You got there in the last minute. You slipped and hurt your leg. I don't know. There are a million unexpected things that can happen. So just being prepared with each one of the pieces that you're to be played, and being prepared for the unexpected. Okay. Is a poster peg better than bent end pin to let you keep head and neck up there? Yeah, I've never really. It's individual. I've never liked bent end pin because I just always felt like it's. If I move, I'm not a big mover, but if I move a little bit, I felt like the cello was dropping down. I think now they're better at bent end pins. Maybe someday I'll give it a try again. I tried it in the past and I didn't like it, but I may like it now. I don't know. And some great cellists use it. So, hey. Which warm-up exercises are you playing every day for left hand and for sound? Yeah, for sound, when just in the beginning I was talking about that, about playing long notes and trying different things, picking a note and trying all the different combinations of bow intensity and speed and place between the bridge and the fingerboard and different width and speeds of vibrato. And for exercises, cross mounts and play arts are always useful. I wish I could say I do them every day. I try to. Just having a scale, doing a slow scale, doing somewhat quicker scales, and if you can, the crossmounts and the fayards are always good to just keep those things moving. Okay, there's second movement of Elgar. Let's get to that. Where is that? I love. Well, that's nice. I love playing with piano, but sometimes I feel like my sound is too small. Any tips for projecting with piano? Well, tell your pianist to play softer. Yeah, pianists are need to be told to play softer and play. Sometimes they get carried away with a pedal. It makes a big difference. If the pianist you play with is sits on the pedal too much, it's really hard to project. There's nothing you can do when you play with a grand especially with the grand piano, but they're just stronger. They have a stronger sound. So some people you can have a more powerful sound. Um, Not always. So tell the pianist to have mercy on you. Um, but also, the more interesting you make your sound, I think the more you project. There's some great cellists who don't have, who are not Rostropovich or something, who don't have this very powerful sound. We talked about vibrato. If you have more variety of vibrato and of articulation, if you think of articulation, if you think of different consonants, articulations there are T and K, and those are L or M or S. The more variety, I like to think of old-time refrigerators. I don't know if you had that experience, the old fridges that make a lot of noise, but you never hear them. And when you hear them, it's when they stop working, when they have the whatever it is they drain. Or I remember being a kid, and that's the loudest silence that you'll hear. I don't know if it's familiar for. I think it's a familiar sound for a lot of people when the fridge stops, and then you know that it's not working. So then you become aware of it being, and the reason is that the sound is monotonous. It's the same sound for so long, you tune it out. So when you play with the piano, if you find ways to vary the articulation, you find ways to vary the vibrato, make it interesting. When you make it interesting, it makes up for not being as loud, and also with dynamic. If you did more, if the mountains are taller, if the soft is soft, and there's more variety of dynamics. So don't be afraid to play softly when you can, and then when you play louder, even if the piano is still louder, the illusion will be that you're stronger than you actually are, and because I think the listener's ear. I mean, if you're covered up, you can't hear it. But our ear is always tuned to things that could change, changes. The ear doesn't the hearing doesn't attach itself to anything that's flat. So the more in your dynamic and in your more highs and lows, I think you'll be heard, even if you know. Until the piano shush it. Unless depends on the music too. Some music is don't do that even in a better than some. Practicing second movement of Elgar Concerto. Well, depending on what the difficulty is, it's difficult in several different ways. One is the offset, how the note is offset always. For that, really having accents on beats. And gradually getting rid of them. Another difficulty in the second movement of Elgar is that the hand gets tired. That's the same with anything where it moves a lot. If you play Elfendan, it's the same thing. So finding places where you can change your place in the bow, where it's louder to be close to the frog. I haven't played it in a long time. To be close to the frog, other places to be close to the tip. So you use different parts of your bow, and then having just being as loose as possible to rest. So that's I think the second difficulty with that piece. And like any fast passages, you know, do rhythms. You know, do that. Do a metronome on the offbeat. If you've never done that, that's a big favorite of mine. If the metronome, I have a metronome here. So instead of going, stay, thank you. Instead of going with the beat, if you think of one and one and two and one and two. Of working with metronome, thinking of the metronome as an offbeat, as a second eighth note of each beat. That I think changes. That's an effective, because just playing with the metronome gets really boring, and that's an effective way of using the metronome that I really and I think in Elgar it's relatively easy to do that one, but in some pieces it's really tough, and it's hard on the brain. It's not so much on the hands. It's fun. Okay. I heard once from a professor that taking a little bit of extra time between excerpts can allow you to better prepare yourself mentally for the next one. Absolutely. Yeah. Just like when you shift, usually you have more time than you think you do. When you play an audition, when you play a concert, there's more time than you think you have. Under stress with adrenaline, I think it's natural to any second feels like hours. So you have to sometimes force yourself in an audition to stop and take the time to figure out, okay, now, but because you could be going from, I don't know, Don Juan to a Mozart excerpt. So things, when we play auditions and excerpts, the styles are so far apart, and we have to do it like that. So taking that extra, if it's 10 seconds, 20 seconds to kind of swipe clean your mind from the previous thing you just played, or even from you messed up a note, which will happen. You mess something up, you feel horrible for it. So taking that time to breathe, let go, think of the next thing you're going to play, find a tempo. Maybe think of the difficult spot there and what tempo you want there to be able to play successfully, or to play the optimal tempo for the most difficult spot that you're going to do. And the concept of the sound, what you're going to play, and breathe into it. So breathe if you're playing something more calm, playing something more energetic. Breathe to really think of your breathing as a wind player or a singer or a conductor. So yeah, the having someone take too long between pieces in audition, it has to be really long for that to bother anyone. So if there's a whole minute of silence, and you have to fit in players every 10 minutes, then yeah, that might be too much. But definitely you want that 10 seconds, 20 seconds, or whatever it is, to calm yourself down. To even if the committee gets a little impatient, what do you care? Right? You're there. You have to remember you're there to play as well as you possibly can. You're there to present yourself. You're in addition to say, hello, this is me. This is how I play. And hopefully you do it in a way that you feel reflects your playing as well as possible. And then whether that's what they're looking for or not, you have very little control of. I think that's going back, that's something that's very important to keep in mind about an audition. Your job is to go and to optimize how you showing who you are. This is me. This is how I play. And then beyond that, what can you do? So just do whatever you need to do. So great. I think this seems like a covered everything. Great. Thank you. Thanks for all the questions. There's some great questions. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'll be listening to. I'll be listening to the next one. This is so awesome. I mean, look at the schedule. There's some incredible, cellists from every aspect of cello playing, from great soloists to chamber music players to teachers and non-classical, everything. So it's such a great time to just learn things and try to internalize. I think for all of us, all the information we get, and see what works for us and try things. What we have plenty of now is time. A lot of things we don't have, but we do have time. So just try things, and before we have our community, we have our cellos, we have our music, and enjoy. And hopefully we can hear each other in concerts all over the world, concert halls and people's homes, and wherever else we play and listen to music soon, because that's I think all of us, that's what we're itching for, and we'll get there. We'll get there. So thanks and good night, everyone. Oh, did I miss something? Sorry. Yeah, that's about. I'm practicing. I kind of talk about it. I don't really have a system. People will go back to some of the chats and previous chats. There are some incredible systems of practice that some people have. It's a matter of personality. I've never been a systematic person, never ever, and so I go day by day. You want to have a strategy for your practice, what you want to achieve, but I've never been one to really have a long-term plan. Sometimes I wish I did, but worked out fine for me the way it is. You have to go by who you are, just how much of a plan you do. But whatever it is, of course, be intentional. Always play with intent and with an idea of what you're trying to achieve. I think that's the overarching something you do. Awesome. Stay safe, stay healthy, and good talking to everyone. Oh, good chat. Okay, good.